Wow, what a show with Amanda Wallis from Infinity Tree Healing. Talk about like one-stop shop.
Right? You have the background she has as an OT, she brings in the healing, sound healing, but she's not just buying, the Tibetan bowls, she bought them when she was in Nepal. Like, real deal here, folks.
All we kept thinking was, how did she get that thing home?
Right, you can
And she
I
had.
can't get a bottle of water on the airplane, right? She's carrying brass antique Tibetan bowls.
But what a beautiful point about, and you brought up some great points in the interview too, with Dan, and questions about the medical, right, whether the allopathic with the alternative, and she's really riding that wave that's here now, the cutting edge, right? People are really needing holistic health, holistic healers. She's bringing the sound. She's doing counseling and then bringing people to the table, help them open to receive the bounty of the energy healing by using the Tibetan bowls first. So she's using all of her gifts. She also talked about, in reference, in answer to your questions, about how she can use her medical prowess to quickly assess someone with keeping in mind how there's also emotional and spiritual components to physical pain and disease.
Right. Right. We know the physical body is the last holdout, right? That's where something's gonna show up, but what's causing that? Where's that coming from? And that's where she can look and see that spiritual, emotional component. But she's also, like you said, with the OT, can address if there is something physical that needs to be addressed via the medical system, X-rays, anything physical like that. But let's also then address what's going on behind it, so we don't keep the Groundhog's Day recapitulating that. So really phenomenal. She's great, and I love that she comes across and she just has a great confidence in the work she does.
Boy, she really gives some great tips for people. This is an example of somebody who's not only being featured for Modality of the Month, but she also brings in sound healing. She's a musical master. So stay tuned for Amanda Wallace on Energy Diagnostics Podcast with Dan and I.
Your love is everything.
Hey, Dan, it's great to be with you again.
As well, thank you so much. Good to be here.
Energy Diagnostics Podcast. We have another master in the house. We are thrilled because we both personally know our Amanda Wallace, who owns Infinity Tree Healing. And Amanda, you have a remarkable background and some great stories to tell. So, of course, we had to invite you on. And you've got this remarkable bridge, right, with physical work as an occupational therapist. Yeah.
Yes.
For like, is it 25, 22, 25 years?
Yes, 24.
Wow. So I'm sure you've seen the industry change since the years that you went in versus now with our medical program, right? So it's just so unique. And throughout that, you were busy studying with many different teachers. Did you want to share with our viewers and listeners a little bit about that?
First, want to thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and it's such an honor to be a part of this vision. I would say probably my journey started in 1998 when I was in college, and it was the first time I went overseas. And I was actually walking on a seawall, and I met a young man that was carving coconuts. And it was really my first spiritual experience I had. I didn't know, but that I saw somebody with so much joy that had nothing, that was living on the street. So it was the first time that I started to question, what was making me happy and what wasn't making me happy. And I think then that transitioned into more of the classes where when I was just graduating college, I started to get introduced to myofascial release, which kind of guided me into Omega Institute back in 2001 and 2, and kind of moved me into this direction of saying, what else is out there and what are the things that are going to help grow me and bring more happiness and joy in my life. So that's kind of where it started. Then, yes, I've been with some great masters, you for one. We think we started back together in 2008. And it's really the consistency, I feel, of the teachers and having people in my life that have guided me and really teaching me how to listen to my own intuition, and that my path is unique and that everyone has a unique path, and it's important to follow your heart's desire.
And so why don't you tell us a little bit about a session with you, Amanda? 'Cause it's very unique and it just seems like one-stop shop to me, but I really want you to share that with our listeners and viewers and of course, Dan.
It is actually one of my greatest joys is to work with people that have not been introduced to energy healing or have no idea. Maybe they come from the medical field or they've never been in this kind of practice. But generally, we start with really what that person is looking for. What are they, are they feeling stuck? What's happening for them? What's happening in their life? And what are they looking to create? So starting there, we start with some dialogue and sharing about what's been going on in their life and what's around that. And a lot of times there's some holding patterns. So we kind of work with that. And then we move into some of the energy work and the sound healing. So basically, I'm listening to what's happening, seeing what's happening in the body, and then I'm addressing it on the table using sound for 5 or 10 minutes. And then I'm also moving into the energy work.
Now, using sound at the beginning seems key. What is some of the feedback that you receive, or what do you notice in terms of people perhaps being able to relax, or what have they shared with you about that approach?
Well, I will say for myself, and what I've seen is we all have that monkey mind that doesn't seem to quiet down. So that sound for me is a really big introduction. There's specific frequencies that I'm choosing as far as the bowls that I really work with first starting to clear the field. So there's specific bowls I use that will clear the field. And then also just getting them to relax and open to receive, just allowing them a little bit of space for them to kind of settle in and just be open to what the energy work can do for them.
And you're using sound. That's what touches everyone to risk opening. Everyone has a story of a particular song or tone that just really helped them to relax or release the monkey mind, as you were saying. I think it's a brilliant approach. Can I just brag on you for a second? Amanda was my DJ. Okay, she has an amazing gift with music. And back in the day, she used to make playlists for everybody. They had themes, and she'd come to me, and I was so touched. She would handwrite every song, and when we still did use CDs, Dan, right? And I can't tell you what joy they brought to me. Your song choices, like you turned me on to these great artists. You always seem to have a gift for music and sound. And I would drive back and forth to New York City office and the Albany office, just listening to your incredible playlist, Amanda. So thank you for all the heart and the gift that you put into those for the people that you loved. I know that you gifted many with those, but it makes sense like sound would come into your practice. But I'm just curious how you were drawn to the bowls.
Yeah, I think, all that started really young. Like music just was a way for me to open my heart and just to feel safe. It was a way for me to connect. And so I think it started actually back for me, the cassette tapes. I was doing mixes of that and sharing it or being on the school bus, sharing tapes and all that. And then, as I got older, I did get into the CDs because it was important for me to share. I think there was parts of myself that I had difficulty sharing, and that music allowed me access to that and to share it with people I love. So I love, that you said that. And I don't really see myself as, say, a traditional musician, right? I played piano when I was young in like 4th or 5th or 6th grade, and I tried to take guitar in college, but it just never really connected. But I really saw the medicine in the music. And there's times with clients I actually will give them song to listen to. But I do feel like I've always been drawn to particular sounds. And when I was traveling to Nepal, that's when my guidance told me, we had stopped at a stupa and said, you need to find a bowl. And I'm like, I don't even know what a singing bowl is. And literally, we went around for probably 2 hours trying to find this bowl. And it was, that is the important part of being on the path and doing the work. And eventually, when you can start hearing your voice and your own guidance, it's very clear, and you just kind of drop everything and follow that. And that's what I did. Instead of kind of being a little bit of a tourist in that moment, which I kind of wanted to be, I was like, no, I need to find this. And that's what started. And I found my own bowl. Actually, this bowl right here.
What a treat. Oh,
And when I got back on the bus, everybody's like, oh, how are you going to get that one back home?
I gotta just say, I was
Oh,
just
girl,
thinking the same
I'm
thing.
sure I will be shown how it's going to get back home.
Journey
So
of the
that's kind of
ball.
started it. Yeah.
So it sounds like you were really guided. And you mentioned something too, because I know that spiritual travel has had deep meaning for you. You've been to many, you're a world traveler. Both Dan and I have been moved by some of your photographs with you in other countries and how touched you were by the people that you met, much like that gentleman that you spoke of earlier. And that seemed to be a continued theme of inspiration for you, even in your photography and travel.
Yes. And I think it's just being present. I think being present and really seeing, and it goes back to joy for me. Again, with that same man at the seawall, seeing the joy. It's the same thing when I travel to other countries and I can see a lot of people, and I've actually been with people that have actually been traumatized being in some of the developing countries, feeling traumatized by what they see. And when you can really see the spirit of people, you see the joy, you see that they can bring in their resilience and their ability to see beauty all around them. Not to say that those things don't exist, the hardships, but I think being able to welcome that and see that also brings more balance. It brings more balance to why we're here. And I think the transition we're in right now in the world, seeing the division and seeing the suffering, but also that we see the beauty too. And that helps us move through it. So yeah, traveling for me, is my medicine. And it's not
Mhm.
traveling, it's not traveling to move away from something, but it really does feed my soul. And each time I've gone to a place, many times it can be a past life finishing for me, but I really feel I'm drawn there, and there's something I'm learning, and there's something I bring back to my family and my friends and my practice from each place.
I often wonder, when we do the Master Destiny tours in Europe, the people that are drawn to specific tours, it just seems like they're meant to step on those ley lines in that particular land for something. Like a video game of life, right? So we have to pass these lines. It's like almost like passing go and collecting our $200. There's something about it that we might not know. We might feel it. It might be a felt sense, but there's some reason we are drawn. And I see it very often in participants, them lighting up. And it'll be a special place and something that just washes over them is deeply meaningful. And it's like they couldn't have had that experience if they didn't follow that call to the pilgrimage. And you've done a lot of those, Amanda. I can imagine that sense of joy and balance and peace is what is washing over your clients as they lay there, and you've spoken to them to build trust. You let them know that you really want to hear them with your good communication skills. Now you're sounding these ancient Tibetan bowls, and it's got to be so relaxing so that they can really open to receive, I can imagine, the highest potential for the energy that you're channeling in that open state.
Yeah, and for me, and actually having worked with you many years, that was one of the greatest gifts that you've given me. And I feel majority of the time I'm able to see their light. I'm able to see it's confusing at times, right? Because when you're working with somebody, you're, all these patterns and defenses and things that are in our way, but we see so clearly, right? We see their light, we see their beauty, we see the gifts, why they're meant to be here. And so I think being able to be a mirror or being able to reflect that to them, because it was done for me and my journey continues too, right? That journey never stops and those challenges never stop. But I think, being a grounding presence for somebody and that consistency with them as they move through whatever challenges they have, I think is so important. And even when you talked about the tours, and I was actually on the Ireland tour with you, and I think part of what's happening as we move forward in the world too is a lot about community. And the gift of that trip for me was a lot about community, being with like-minded people that were at that same frequency, that were wanting to, experience something deeper. That was really powerful for me. And I think the community and the support that we need now is so important. And I think the more authentic and the more we can show up with even the questions or the concerns, the ideas or the confusion or the frustration of what's happening, I think the more likely we are to move through that with more grace and more ease. Not, again, doesn't mean we're exempt from suffering, but moving through it a little bit easier and feeling like somebody's holding our hand and has our back.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like I'm hearing you mention the ever-present connection to spirit, but also how important it is to join in community, like-minded people. It gets me curious, Dan. Are we in the United States? This is where we live. We can only speak for this. A country that it takes great pride in encouraging people to be individualists. If we've gotten so far away of community, many great people are being called back into that for the purpose of, yeah, knowing you're not alone in this world and the challenges that we face, but also the beauty that is contained in that. And you mentioned something too, Dan, that struck you. Last time you were seeing Amanda, she was doing a beautiful teaching.
Yeah. I have a question. You were talking about clients coming in for sessions and that. I'm lit up because you have the healing, sound healing, but also you have this brilliant background in OT and the science. My brain wants to know the connection between the two. And do you have clients that come in more for, as you mentioned, they're looking sort of bigger picture down the road, need more of the healing aspect? Or do you have people that come in with my hip hurts and then you bridge that gap with healing work as well? And what's the combo there and how does one help the other?
Well, for many, many years, I like to keep one on one end of my hand and one on the other until I was really able to connect them in my heart. Now, just from a legal perspective, I work under a license and script from a doctor.
Okay.
So anything related specifically to OT, exercise programs, things like that, then I would refer them to where I practice, which I still practice. I practice in both worlds. But I do feel my background in both areas really inform me. You can't take the healer, the energy healer, and the worker out of the OT, and you can't do the opposite. I think doing both and seeing the bigger picture of when somebody has hip pain, that there's a physical aspect to it, but there's also an emotional aspect and there's a spiritual aspect. And seeing that more fully, I think, informs me when I'm actually working with them in the medical field. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely energy work and there's other things that can be done around that. That's not just, right, a home exercise program, but understanding the mechanics of it. So if I see somebody and there really is an issue, then I really recommend absolutely go to the doctor. It sounds like, you might have torn your labrum or your rotator cuff, or you might have this injury. So I can refer them. I have a lot more knowledge as far as where to refer them or what could be happening, that, wow, we really need to pay attention to this, and address it from, 2 or 3 different aspects. And maybe there's also another modality or practitioner I'm going to recommend too.
Yeah, really wise, right? Love that you bringing in the medical background of like, look, we can do the healing work, but there's actually something that physically needs to be addressed in, we'll just use the hip, for example, that we need to address that, with the doctor, but we can do this other work as an adjunct as well. So that
Mhm.
it's not all just healing fixes everything, right? There are physical components, right? I love the healing world. I love the medical world, right? If I'm ever in a car accident, please get me to the hospital, get me stable, and then get me home, and I can feel good and heal at home, right? But let's get the emergency things taken care of right away. And so it's great you bridge that, and then bringing in referrals too, right? There's nothing greater than going to a practitioner, and they're like, "Hey, you know what? I could do this, but this person is actually fabulous at this. This is my world, and this is what they handle." That to me, that means where you are and where you operate from, right? You know your playing field. And really spectacular that you have the wisdom to be able to know when to call that into play too.
Love that. Thanks, Dan, for that perspective. You also speak to how important, I love that you brought in the emotional, and the spiritual component. You've often shared, Amanda, about how important it is to have a spiritual practice.
Yes.
How does that play into holding both the medical? Of course, you're also doing sounding, counseling, energy healing. I know that that's a really big component of what you hold for people. You can share with our listeners and viewers why you feel the spiritual practice is so important for this work.
Yeah, I really think probably two words is personal responsibility and accountability. So, this is something that I struggle with. This is also something that is a part of my life that I constantly am changing because for me to even do my work and to be healthy, I have to continually create new practices, what that looks like for me. So, starting in the morning, I actually do some physical exercises. I do my chakra opening exercises. I do meditation. So there's a lot of things that I need to do to really hold myself accountable and aligned to the type of energy that I want to bring into the world and how I want to show up for my clients in either one of my practices. And I really think it's really a masterful way too of challenging yourself and bringing yourself into the moment. So whether you have a mindfulness practice or whether you're willing to explore gratitude at the end of the day and writing that in your journal or listening to high vibrational music like the music you both make. And it can be as simple as just smiling, right? And choosing to go into the grocery store, maybe smiling at somebody. So I think those practices, especially again, think we go back to what's happening in the world, but I think those practices are so important to keep yourself grounded and also like kind of in the eye of the storm when there's a lot of chaos and things, the dust is flying in the air, can you bring yourself back to alignment of who you are, regardless of all these things that are happening around. So I can be challenged by it. I feel like it can be successful. And I think it's something that moves and changes over time. So my practices have changed over the last 20 years very differently.
Well said. And I think you have a little treat for us because we're really thrilled that you're going to be expanding Infinity Tree Healing in 2025, Amanda. And we'd love to share with our listeners and viewers some of the magic. And we've seen our Amanda Dan like on the floor with, I couldn't even tell you, 30 bowls and delighting us in a magnificent sound bath. But we'd love to hear the vibration of the Tibetan bowls and have a little bit of an experience of what your clients feel and experience themselves in the beginning of a session once you move them over to the healing table.
Yeah, so what I wanted to do was just share a couple of the bowls I have and just give you an idea of, what I might use them for. What is really important about the bowls is really, I think Thich Nhat Hanh used the term inviting, so inviting the sound. And even choosing, people have asked me how to choose the bowl, and allowing yourself to choose it and be called to it and have the bowl talk to you is probably the best way. There's no right or wrong. So this is a bowl that I use a lot of times at the start of the session to allow somebody to relax. So just start by relaxing your toes and your ankles and your calves, relaxing your thighs and your hips, relaxing your abdomen up into your solar plexus, relaxing your chest, softening your heart, relaxing your eyes and your ears and the muscles around your nose and mouth. And this is another bowl. So this is my own bowl. And this is one that I used actually for clearing. So I actually clear the top of the body with this bowl. before we start doing some of the other sound healing. A little bit more vibration. When you're up over the body, it really helps to clear, move the energy down, clearing out, letting go of anything that doesn't serve you, anything that's not supporting you during the session. So the bowls I use are actually in the Tibetan sound system. So the Vedic system, more in India, the root chakra is actually a C. In the Tibetan system, the root chakra is an F. And so this is another one of my favorite bowls, and it's a root bowl here. Laying down, I'd maybe have this in between their legs, using it as a root chakra to kind of draw the energy down. Just have two more here. This is actually called a full moon bowl. So this bowl is made very specifically in the light of the moon at a specific time. Usually it's really late at night. And so this again has another more of a heart sound. And this is a D note. So very beautiful. And lastly, so this bowl I actually will play. It's a very old, this is a very old antique bowl. And this I would play over their body. And if I'm looking to work on a particular area, I might move it into the infinity sign and do a clearing over that area.
That's the best. That's like the best part of doing this is getting these little mini the F, bowl there, like, the arches of my feet started to like, were magnetically drawn to the earth, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I can." It was just, like, the heaviness, but in a good way, but just the heaviness of it was, like, the arches of my feet started to tingle a little bit. That was really interesting. That was fascinating. Thank you.
That second to last one, I think you said was the heart. I actually felt it also opening and, really soothing to my throat. Just, it's amazing how each sound is a different frequency that does and has a different effects, right, Dan?
It's one of the mysteries that I would love to know how it works, and I probably never will. I just have to accept that I will just invite the sound in and let it do its magic and just be happy with that.
And I love, if I could just add to what you said, Joy, I love that you said you felt that in a different area, because I think that's so important. Well, we're all on our individual journey. The experience we have, whether it's a healing session, a sound session, is really to honor and pay attention to how you're feeling with it, right? So if the note is supposed to be for a heart and we feel it up in our crown, like I love that you shared that, because I feel like that's where people start to trust their own intuition and really work on themselves and what they're experiencing. It's so easy in the world with all the information we have is to look outside of ourselves, to constantly look for the validation out there. And I think what's happening more and more is the inner work that we're doing, and the importance of that, of going within, because that's really where my path is. It's really going to be where my purpose is. And for everybody else, it's individual. And to start, wow, I'm just noticing that in my throat. And what do I want to do with that or share that? I think, I just think that's so powerful. So thank you for sharing that.
But thanks for that really nugget of gold that you just gave, which is, we do live in a very externalized world, especially with technology that's continually pulling out of ourselves. And here we are using it to share wisdom of going within, right? Which is what you offer at Infinity Tree Healing. And the cool thing about you is you have a global reach. You work with people online, right? As well
Correct.
as in person.
Virtually, yes.
That means you can work with anyone all over the world. And so Dan and I are just thrilled that you joined us, Amanda, and shared your immense wisdom, and gifts as a sound healer, and look forward to the expansion of Infinity Tree Healing and you sharing your beautiful gifts with others on their personal journey of coming home to themselves. I want to thank you for being on Energy Diagnostics Podcast today because this is gonna be the gift that just keeps giving. I can
Mm.
still hear those vibrations and feel that. Thank you so much. We love you dearly.
And thank you. And I'm so happy to be in the energy of the dream team. And I just wish you all the best. And this is so awesome for the world to see you guys and just all the connection you have with all these beautiful healers and teachers and musicians. So I'm looking forward. I have listened to them and I'm listening to all the ones to come. So I'm so excited for you both.
Thank you. And, you're really, a dream yourself because not only are you featuring modality of the month, but you're including being a master of sound simultaneously. And
Mm.
we see that so much with people that have that gift, and we wish you all the best. And we're thrilled for people around the world to be able to see and hear your prowess. Thank you so much.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Joy and I really appreciate it. Hey, if you're liking our content here, please make sure you like, follow, subscribe on your favorite platform to make sure you, stay up to date with all the latest and greatest we put out here at Energy Diagnostics Podcast.
That's right, Dan. And if you're liking our content, folks, please feel free to share so others may enjoy the benefit of the wisdom our guests are offering.
Thanks so much and be kind to each other out there.